Hi everyone, welcome to the How to Market Your Accounting and Bookkeeping Firm on Social Media. While we're waiting for a few more people to join, because I appreciate this is pretty early in the morning UK time, I thought it would be of interest just to look at a little bit of feedback that you gave me when you registered. So I asked a couple of questions on here. And these are the results. So really interesting just while we wait to delve into these. So in terms of how often you're posting to social media, I was interested that not very many of you are posting super frequently. So the sort of one to more than one times a day, but a really nice grouping of sort of fairly regular posts sort of around the once a week, just to 2 or 3 times a week. Quite a few of you not posting super often, so maybe 2 to 3 times a month, if that. And we've got maybe some ideas as to how you could increase that during this webinar. In terms of use of social channels, I thought this was really interesting. When we do this webinar in New Zealand and Australia, the Twitter, which is in grey, is much lower, and the Instagram's bigger. And it just goes to show in the UK, Twitter it's much more widespread, has much greater engagement. So, you know, maybe no surprise that LinkedIn and Facebook are the highest, but you know, Twitter is a strong third. So I thought that was interesting. And then just in terms of what you're posting to social media. So I was glad to see that memes and funnies are kind of down the bottom of the list, because obviously, you know, you guys are professionals, and your job is to hopefully educate and engage and build those relationships with your clients on social media. And obviously, memes and funnies have their place, but, you know, fantastically, you know, educational content, commentary and insights were really strong. So I was really happy to see that. Interesting that videos were maybe less relevant, and definitely social is a great place to post videos, whether it's just something you've recorded on your iPhone or a snippet that you've seen. So I'd definitely give that a bit of attention when it comes to ideas for posting on social. Cool, so I think we've got everyone on. Fantastic and welcome. My name is Charles Clark, and I'm really thrilled to have Phil Sayers with us today. Now, Phil, I think he's known to quite a few of you, especially those he's worked with and the GAP members as well. And so Phil is a salesman, sales director, CEO, and author. It's quite a mouthful. And he's also founded Protein Sales Development. So he works a lot with accountants and clients to improve how they sell their services. So you might be saying, well, how do you sell your services on social media? How does that go together? The nice thing is that obviously there's no point doing social media just for the fun of it. Ultimately at the end of the day, you want to have it come back to you in terms of your sales and your relationships. So that's why Phil's here, and I think we're really lucky to have him. So welcome, Phil.
Thank you, Charles. No, good to be here. And you're right, I do recognise a few names on the attendee list, some of whom are also users of the GAP that I also represent in the UK. There is a quick question, Charles, actually, before we kick off. Somebody has asked if the slides are going to be available after the webinar, or do they need to take screenshots?
Oh, actually, so let me post them. So you should have received an email, and it was a little bit late going out tonight, or sorry, this morning. We had technical issues, but that has a link to all of them. But look, let me post it in here, and then you should be able to click on the link, and you can access. Oh, excuse me. There we go. So if you click on that link there, that'll take you through to all the Google Slides, and then you can download that and make your notes as you need to. I'll just go. Brilliant. Okay, thanks for that, Phil. Glad you caught that.
No worries.
Because I was busy on my intro. Okay, so I'm really thrilled to say that I don't feel like I have to sort of belabor the point of why you should be using social media, although I think it is really useful to recap, you know, why it is such a powerful tool. You know, there's about 4 or 5 main things that I like to think of as sort of key reasons as one is your brand awareness. So obviously you have your website, which is a great shop window for your practice, for your business. But nowadays consumers, they'll check out your website, but they'll also very much go and check out your social platforms. So, are you on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram? And if you're not, I'm not saying it would send up red flags, especially for, sort of maybe a generation who aren't so used to social media, but for younger people, especially with, younger businesses, that's how they are very used to engaging with people and businesses. So it's just a sort of a health check that you would have a social presence. And secondly, not only is it a great place for you to have a presence, but you have fantastic content and you have fantastic knowledge. And social media is a really brilliant way to amplify that content. So definitely, and through that amplification, you can start to position yourself as an expert and a thought leader. So you might like to, pick specific topics. There may be people within your firm or practice who really excel in certain things. Social is just a great place for you to be involved in conversations, showcase your expertise, and really, I suppose, draw a line in the sand that when people are looking for accountants and bookkeepers and they come across your name, they start to come across it regularly in association with specific services, that really, really assists to, I suppose, moving you up the totem pole in terms of your expertise. And I suppose another reason why they should, consider you and consider working with you. And also, it's word of mouth. So the old word of mouth that many accountants loved and bookkeepers obviously was referrals, so client referrals. And that still holds true. But again, now more than ever, even if a client is referred or refers someone, again, they will check out your website, they check out your social media pages. And also you can now have online client reviews. So you actually on your social profiles, you can actually have these reviews. So there for all to see is, how you've been helping your clients. And so just a really fantastic way that people, without feeling anxious or nervous about sort of calling you up, can really start to understand what it is that you offer and what makes you maybe different from other people out there. And lastly, it's fantastic for networking. Accountants and bookkeepers are a super social bunch. There are fantastic resources out there, both in terms of upskilling and educating you, but also, supporting you. Now more than ever, with everything going on in the world in terms of COVID-19, everyone needs some support. And, I know there are lots of groups out there where there is that support, where you can talk through the sorts of challenges that you're facing. So definitely, consider it as well from a sort of support and group perspective. So what social network should I be using? And this actually links through to a question that someone asked, and it was, should I be using Pinterest and Instagram? And my answer for this is, if your clients are on Pinterest and Instagram and they're not on Facebook or LinkedIn, yeah, definitely consider going on those. But if they're not on Pinterest or Instagram, and you can find this out by asking them, then there's no point, because then you're spending some time on a social platform that is not actually going to be reaching your desired audience. So we're going to concentrate on the main four, because this is where most people are in the world. But obviously, if you serve a lot of retail clients, then maybe something like, focusing on Instagram and maybe Pinterest would be good. Maybe if you're sort of serving a brand that does a lot of, I suppose, youth work, then maybe something like TikTok would be of interest. So yeah, so we'll just concentrate on these main four for now. Before we go any further, this is a favorite slide of mine and also a great singer. And I thought this really summed up well the social tone between the different networks. And so obviously we're not talking about Tinder here, but that's just what Dolly posted. But I think it really clearly illustrates the differences between the different social networks. And so you should really think about what you're posting on the different networks, what would be appropriate on the different networks, and also who's likely to be on the different networks. So, you know, as you can see here, LinkedIn, it's a bit more formal, it's a bit more business focused, whereas Facebook and Instagram are a little bit more fun. You might be sort of posting slightly different topics, even though they're still from you and your from your business. So I think just something to keep in mind, that definitely the networks are different, and just to sort of be aware that you shouldn't treat them all the same. And I think this actually comes back to a question that you asked, Phil, in terms of should I post the same thing or exactly the same content to the different networks? And I suppose my answer would be, you know, again, would be no. And if you do want to post something really similar, that's fine, but you could maybe make it more formal on LinkedIn and more casual on Facebook. So it's not that you can't post the same thing, but the language and the imagery might change.
The other part to that question that came through, Charles, was looking at the value or otherwise of putting sort of brief posts on social media, but linking back to a blog posting on the website as a means of driving traffic, and should we be using different messaging on the different platforms in order to drive that traffic?
Cool. Sorry about, oh, sorry everyone. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great way to do it, and we do it all the time. I think if you can, I mean, ultimately the name of the game is to increase visits to your website, where hopefully you can interest them with something that you've written, or a video, or you know, maybe it's research that you've done. So definitely using the social networks to drive people back to your website is really, really important. The nice thing is that you could use multiple links. So you could drive some people back to a blog post, other times it could be back to a case study that you've done recently, other times it might be back to a services page where you're actually, maybe you've got an offer, or maybe even you've got a webinar like this, maybe you're hosting something. So, you know, there's many, many ways that you can promote yourself and your business on social media. It's not just always about sharing the knowledge, although that's obviously a really important part. You know, definitely you can think about how you can drive people back to your website and ultimately to hopefully engage them in a sales conversation, which Phil will talk about later. So look, we're just going to cover a couple of the basics. And I say they're basics, but I think they're still really, really important. So when someone goes onto your social page, you've got, you know, a few seconds to really make an impact. And so the key elements here being your cover photo. It's really critical. It tells your story, it tells your brand, and it basically will give people the first hint of what it is that you're about, if, you know, if they've landed on your, say, one of your social pages and haven't landed on your website. So you can see Kinder Pocock here, a couple of really nice things they've done. They've got the fact that they are a gold partner with Xero there. They've got a couple of bits of technology, so iPhone, sort of laptop, and an iPad, just to indicate that they're progressive and forward moving. And then also the tagline, a refreshing change. So that's obviously more of a branding question. But again, you can imagine what they were thinking. You know, so many people are looking for, you know, a change in their accounting, and it's a really nice tagline that sort of that they can fulfill with how it is that they do business. One thing to note here is making sure that your imagery and your I suppose your brand is consistent across all the different social channels. So this is taken from Facebook, but again, if you went to LinkedIn or Twitter, you would see the same logo from Kinder Pocock, and you would see the same colors of messaging. So having that consistency is really important. Again, and that should all link back to the same brand and logos and imagery as on your website. I was talking earlier about using reviews on your social pages, and again, actually, no, that's on the next slide. Sorry. So don't miss the chance to use it to showcase both your business and yourself personally. So you can see here two really nice examples. So Let is involved in a huge number of operations in Australia, and you can see here that on her Twitter page, she links to all of them. Also, she has a really nice profile picture, and so you can see here if someone landed on her Twitter profile, that they would immediately get the feeling that this was a person who was involved in a lot of things. She's a director of multiple chambers. She's an Editor's Choice winner. So it's a really nice way for her to, I suppose, showcase what it is that she's achieved personally. And Glenn Martin from Avery Martin does it really well here. And I've got two examples. One is his personal LinkedIn profile. And you can see here that down the bottom in his about section, he's got a really nice blurb that showcases his experience and also the areas that he's skilled in. And then in terms of the Avery Martin profile picture, they basically got the nice 0 awards there, basically, which if one was a client or a prospective client coming on here would give a huge amount of reassurance that that this is a firm who knows what they're doing and they've been recognized for their excellence. So it's great to have the nice profile images, but you've also got the rest of your profile page. So again, think of it, if someone came onto your social page and really didn't know anything about you, maybe they're being referred by another client of yours, don't miss the trick to tell them about your story and also what it is that you do. And you can see here, even in terms of where you're located, contact details, and any other information that would be relevant to that person. I mean, yes, they could go to Google Maps or they could maybe find it on the website, but why make it harder than it needs to be for them to get the information, which might lead them to an email or a phone call, which then might go into a sales conversation. So, treat your social channels as importantly as you would your website. It doesn't take a lot of work to make them look good, and I highly recommend that you really use that opportunity to sell yourself and to sell your business and your skills. And I'm just a question from Patrick, which is understand that you should try and adjust the content for each channel. A small like mine doesn't have the staff or the time to do this. Yeah, Patrick, that's a common issue that a lot of people face when it comes to social media. And I'm not trying to give a sort of an out and out plug for Boma, but that is what we do. So we've got the content and the means to distribute it. So if you're ever thinking, right, I need to sort of make small changes to the content in the Boma platform, you've got it all in front of you, and you can actually make very small changes all on the one platform rather than sort of having to go to Twitter, make the change to LinkedIn, sort of rewrite it. So, sometimes that efficiency just comes through, through technology, and that's obviously where Boma can help. A lot of times we're asked, what can we share? Because this is one of the things that people often get most worried about when they take those first steps into social media. It all sounds great, and then suddenly they think, goodness me, I have to share something every day or a couple of times a day, or maybe it's just once a week, and it's kind of like a possum in the headlights, and they freeze. But don't worry, there are tons and tons of things that you can share. So this is absolutely within your wheelhouse as business advisors and experts. So you can share things like reminding and supporting clients with key compliance dates. There must be at least 10 to 12 of those per year that you can just send out and remind them. Sharing news that directly affects your clients. So it might be a policy update or a regulation change. Commenting on changes within the industry. Again, this is a common one. It might be something topical. It doesn't always have to be directly related to what your clients are doing, but again, just helps you position you or your firm as someone who is aware of what's going on in the industry, is on top of any changes that are coming, and ideally, because you'll be aware of what you're posting, it will serve the dual purpose of making sure that you're up to date with all the changes in the industry. And so the next time that you're at a conference or an event, these won't be sort of like a bolt out of the blue. So industry publications. So I know you guys have lots of access to these, whether they're online or offline. So like in print, or a newspaper, there's often things in there that you can post about. And so you might post a link which goes back to that page, or you might just reference a story. And if it's a big enough story, people will know what you're talking about. Promoting or commenting on events. So this is a fantastic one. So an easy one to comment on would be a Xerocon or a Xero Roadshow, just as sort of one that I know you guys would all be familiar with. Really easy for you to be there, to maybe comment on a speaker that you saw, or maybe a short video of something that was interesting, and then you can post it. Or if you're running your own event, so this might be, well, in these days and age, it's probably a webinar, but once hopefully everything goes back to normal, it could be a breakfast event or an after work event that you run for clients or prospective clients. The great thing is that you could do a social post which then links back to a form where they can sign up for the webinar or for your event. Also, don't forget to boost your clients' brands. This is probably most relevant on Twitter and LinkedIn, although Facebook's also good, especially if your clients are there. But if they've had a success recently, if they've done something which is worthy of celebration, or just something that's really fun, talk about it. They'll appreciate it. And also it will probably show other people that you really are engaged with your clients, that you know what they're up to, that you care. And there is a lot to be said for accountants and bookkeepers who go beyond just the sort of day-to-day and really get involved in their client's business on a slightly deeper level, and especially a personal level in these days. And then obviously that goes doubly so for your firm. So if you've won an award, or you've been to an event, or you've hired someone new, or you've had a success, let people know. Especially your clients will appreciate it, and other people within your industry as well are often always a great source of support and share. And everyone likes to support people who are doing well and are doing their best. Oh, I've just got another question here. I saw an inspirational clip on YouTube from Beyonce talking to the class of 2020, which it feels is worthy of repeating. Would you put something like this on LinkedIn? I think it'll be fine on Facebook and Twitter. I haven't seen the clip, but I'm assuming it's a commencement speech. So yeah, I would totally put it on Facebook and Twitter. Maybe be aware of how long it is, and you could definitely put a little comment on there. What is it in that clip that you found really interesting? What spoke to you? Because if it spoke to you, it'll probably speak to other people in your audience, and that's what underlines social, is the authenticity of it. Is that you saw something, it touched you, and you thought it would be useful and of interest to your clients. So I definitely post on Facebook and Twitter. Hard to say on LinkedIn. Probably, yeah, I probably would. She's a seriously amazing performer and businesswoman, and yeah, so I would say yes, definitely to that one. And actually, this goes right into my next point, which is don't be afraid of sharing other people's content. So this might be, in Lilette's case, she saw something from the National Retail Association. Well, that's fantastic for her clients. So she was very happy to tweet that. And then the other one was just a comment from Hire Purchase. So the point here is that it doesn't always have to be your content from your website. As we talked about before, it could be from a news site, it could be from the taxation office, or a governmental office, or a local office. If it's good content and it will be useful for your clients or your audience, feel free to share it. As always, you can put a little comment on it just to sort of state why you're sharing it and why you found it of interest. But yeah, so definitely don't be afraid of sharing other people's content. I would say though, make sure you know what's in what you're sharing. I definitely heard the odd story of someone who reads a headline, says, oh, that'll be great to share, and then shares it and then realizes that actually it wasn't quite what they thought. And, that's not a good look for anyone if you sort of saying that it's going to tell them about, in this case, time to move, and it's kind of, slightly off base, or there's something slightly objectionable in there. But also, we've been talking a lot about sharing inspirational and educational and insightful content, but at the heart of it, social is meant to be fun. So this is from a bookkeeper in Northern Australia, and that's her dog, and he sits with her every day, and about sort of in the afternoon when it's walkie time, he sort of comes and sits next to her desk and starts to whine. And she posted that and gets lots of engagement, and because her clients, they know her, they've met the dog, and it's just a little bit of insight and a little bit less serious, and it kind of lightens people's days. So in this case, it's a video. It could be, something fun that you've seen. It could be that you're out on a morning walk and you've seen something incredibly beautiful that you'd like to share with your followers. So again, have some fun. Do be mindful again of the tone. So I wouldn't be posting this on LinkedIn, but on, say, on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, it's perfect.
Charles, there are quite a few accountants I've seen in the UK who do have office dogs, and they're even listed on the website as a member of staff. And I know Penny, who's on this morning, she does the same, and you see regular updates from the dog, and it is a lovely, lovely sort of personal touch that comes across really well.
No, I think that's a great point. And an interesting question has just come in, and it's basically, how does an accounting firm stand out in a Facebook group when you're competing with so many accountants? So hi Mel, I'm hoping I got your name right. Apologies if I haven't. I assume you're talking about a business group where there are other businesses as well as accountants, and you're asking, how does one stand out? So look, there's no one size fits all. I suppose a couple of points that I would make, which is don't be bland and sort of the same as everyone else. If you're wanting to stand out, think about what makes your firm interesting, unique, special, any niches that you have, anything that you do better than anyone else. And then you can start to hone in on that and really push that as an example. Another thing I would think about
I'll pick up on this as well, Charles, later on.
Sorry, what's that?
Sorry, I'll pick up on this later on as well.
Oh, great, yeah. Another thing I would think about is and this is more of a branding point, but if you have a terrible or not very interesting logo and sort of bad profile imagery and all the rest of it, it will be harder to stand out. Don't be shy about commenting. Social is by nature social, and so don't join a group and then sort of sit there in the background and not say anything. Engage in conversation, be present. One thing that, this is a technique that some people use, and I think you have to be careful with it, depending on what your comfort level is. You could always be controversial. So if someone is sort of asking a question, you don't always have to give the sort of pat answer, or if it's a sort of a comment on something that's happened in the news. If you've got a strong point of view, which you can back up and you believe, then by all means go out and say it. Obviously, abide by the rules of the group and don't be sort of nasty. But if you have something that is maybe swimming against the current of the other people in the group, well, that's no bad thing. And as long as you can back up what you're talking about, and it sort of is going to be useful to the person who asked it, I would definitely consider that as well. So in terms of getting started on social, I've made it all sound quite sort of like it's easy to get started. And I realize that while quite a few of you are involved in it already, maybe even if it's just on a personal level because you have a personal Facebook profile or LinkedIn or Twitter profile, having a business page, is a little bit more involved. And I can't recommend highly enough that you do have a business page, as I said before. But if you're just getting started in terms of your professional presence online on social networks, I would say firstly observe what other people are doing. Go onto a couple of groups, follow some accounts or bookkeepers or influencers that you admire, and see how they do it. See the sorts of language they use, see the hashtags they use, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And the more you get comfortable with and sort of familiar with what they're doing, you'll start to find your own voice, and then you can start to dip your toes in. So I'm not suggesting that you dip your toes in on every single channel at once. Maybe choose the one that you feel most comfortable with and start posting a few comments, a few insights, a few videos, whatever makes you sort of feel like you can sort of handle it and sort of build on from there. And then also be responsive. And if someone comments on a post that you've done, go back to them, say, oh, thanks very much. That was really interesting. Why did you think that? Engage them in a conversation. It sounds like it's a bit of work. And look, I'm not going to lie, if you do it properly, it is a little bit of work, but it's like any other thing in your day. If you budget for it, and it might only be sort of 10-15 minutes a day, it can actually you sort of become second nature and quite efficient. And I'd also say, if you are working with colleagues, lean on them. This doesn't need to be a single person operation. So they may have ideas that they can contribute, or especially if you've got a business page, they can post either on behalf of the page, or they can post by themselves, and then put a link into your website or a hashtag to sort of connect it up. So it doesn't have to all fall on one person's shoulders. And then lastly, if you find that you're getting lots of reactions or comments from certain types of posts or on a certain channel, fantastic. That's the first learning. Do more of what works. Try a few things, and some of them may work better than others. And so that's great. Do the ones that are working well for you. And in time, you'll find other areas that maybe begin to work as well. You don't always have to sort of say that it's the one. You're sort of stuck on one element of it. So I think it's also important to think about what you want from your social media. And it's not really enough to say, well, I want millions and millions of followers, or I want tons and tons of sales. I think you sort of have to be a little bit specific here. So, is it something like connecting with a community of like-minded professionals? And so you might use it as a support mechanism, and one that you can, and also sort of educational perspective. Or it might be, I want more fans and followers, because then when I post to my social channels, I will get more amplification, which hopefully I can then drive people back to my website. Or it might be something like, I want reviews of my business. So I'm going to ask my best clients to go and post their reviews onto my social channels, and that can be my sort of online word of mouth. There's lots of things that you can sort of want from social media, but if you're getting started, I think it's really good to have in mind the one or two things that you want, and then you can consider, when you're doing something, does this drive the action that I'm wanting towards the goal that I want? And if it doesn't, that's fine. And if you have the time to sort of to do those extra things as well, but if you're short on time, then at least you can prioritize and say, look, this thing, it really does drive towards my goal, and so I'm going to make the time to do it. Or if it doesn't, then you don't have to feel too bad about maybe leaving it for another day. And in terms of your day-to-day, and right at the beginning, I was talking about how you guys are using it and how often you're posting. And so I think it's really useful, whether you're posting every day or just a couple of times a month, to have a bit of a plan of action. So make sure that you put a bit of time aside on a regular basis, and however regular is up to you. Is it once a day? Is it once a week? Whatever cadence you think you can keep up with and works is fine. And you can use that to engage with other users and post consistently. So as again, if you have a cadence of once a week or twice a week, that's great. Or if it's more, fantastic. But it's just, if you can sort of put these in your diary as I'm going to post every Tuesday or Wednesday, then you sort of, in your head, it's there, and you can start to be looking out for things during the rest of the week that you might want to post. One of the questions we had was about timing a post. When should I time a post? And this is a really good one, because if you went out and posted on all the networks at 12 o'clock on a Tuesday, you would only know that for 12 o'clock on a Tuesday, you got those results. What you'd miss out on is that your audience will use those networks in different ways. So think about the times that they might be using it. So they might be using it when they get up in the morning or just before they're going to bed at night. They might be using it on their commute to work or from work. They might be using it during their lunch hour. So there's lots of times that you might want to think about to post. You can also think about when might they be using a specific channel. So if I wake up in the morning at 7 a.m., it's pretty unlikely I'm going to click into LinkedIn and sort of look at who's tried to connect to me and what the sort of the latest information is. I might, however, go into Twitter or Facebook if I just want a bit of a précis of what's happened overnight. However, I might use LinkedIn when I get to work. So have a think about your audience, what channels you're on, and then experiment. So there's nothing wrong with, on 1 week, doing a post on Facebook in the morning, and then the next week or later on that week, you can try it in the afternoon. You'll start to see when your posts are getting good engagement. And just a tip in terms of frequency of posts, in terms of reposting, Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook, once you've posted something, it's pretty uncommon that you would necessarily post exactly the same post again. Twitter, on the other hand, because it's so fast moving, there's hundreds of tweets a second, it's in fact good practice. You could post a tweet in the morning, and then later on that afternoon, you could post it again, and it would be seen probably by completely different audiences. So if you really enjoy using Twitter, I definitely consider multiple posts of your posts, especially if it's to something important. So you're promoting an event, or it's something really, I suppose, that you find, that you feel will be successful with your audience. As I said before, whatever posts or comments or questions you have, always try and respond to them. Just a great place to start building those connections with them. Hopefully, they might be clients, or they might be people who might become clients, and showing that willingness to engage and answer questions and help, I think, goes a really long way. And also people, then when they come onto your social page, they'll be looking through your questions and posts, and if they see that you're willing to engage, I think that sends a really positive sign. From an algorithm perspective, the more that your posts have comments and questions on them, the higher up they'll be surfaced. So if someone comments on your post and then you comment back and then they re-comment again, fantastic. Facebook now knows that that is a post with of high relevance, and it will suddenly start serving it to more people. So it's actually quite a good way to drive, I suppose, better reach. The other way to drive reach is to boost or sponsor a post. So this basically is, if you have a really good post, and this might be, it could be promoting an event, or it could just be a post that you've done which has been really successful, you can always go and put a little bit of money behind it. So it doesn't need to be a huge amount. It could be, 10 or 15 pounds. And then you can select the audience that you want it to target. So you could say, look, I want to boost this post and I want it to target tradies, because this post is particularly relevant to tradies. So lots of ways that you can sort of, I suppose, take your best posts, most popular posts, and see if you can get a little bit more leverage out of them. And Penny, yes, we will be sending out a recording. I'll be doing that tomorrow. We have slightly covered this, but I think just a really important to reiterate that there are fantastic groups on especially Facebook and LinkedIn. So whether you use them to learn or contribute, interact with people, find new jobs, find new employees, it's a really unique part of the social network. And the nice thing is, usually you will be, especially if you join an industry group, you'll be talking with like-minded people. So the issues and challenges that you're experiencing, or also difficulties, great place to share. And as I understand it, most groups have sort of a what goes on in the group stays in the group. So you then don't have to be concerned about questions sort of getting out into the wider context. There is a bit of a level of trust that operates in these. And so most accounting groups that I'm a part of are very strong on, an openness, so that, communication can really be fostered, and it's of greater use for the members. And Hamel's just asked a question: would you recommend the Facebook push options that appears when you generate a post? Are you talking about I'm not sure if you're talking about Boost. Yes, if you are talking about Boost is another great option. That's kind of what we were talking about before, just a really easy way to boost and sort of get your post out to more people. So
the other question, sorry, Charles, the other question that Hamel's just answered is, has that worked for anybody else? I've used the Facebook Boost option a lot, and in terms of getting increased coverage, it can be really, really effective. Just be careful that you really focus the audience you want to boost it to. So be very careful at putting in real strong definitions of the types of interests of people you want to approach. Because that will get much better quality of coverage and attraction for you.
Yeah, no, exactly. So we had about 55 questions, and I've just picked a couple, and I feel like I've answered a few. So I'm just going to cherry pick a few out of here because I know we're short on time. So I'm just going to go to number 4, which is the merits in growing followers organically versus using paid ads. So look, the merits of doing it organically, it's free other than your time. The con, I suppose, is that it can take a lot of time. So you could spend, a lot of time growing your followers, and you might sort of get a few a week, or depending on how active you are. If you use paid ads where they specifically say they ask the user to follow you, then you might be getting, depending on how long you run it for and how much money you put behind it, you might be getting 50 new followers a week. Actually, but linking back to what Phil's just saying, make sure your targeting is spot on, because there's nothing worse than getting a whole lot of people following you who aren't your target audience, because that's just a bit of a waste of your time, and you probably know that they're never going to buy off you. Yeah. If you have the money, if you have the budget available, I'd highly recommend using the paid version, especially if you're just starting out. Once you have a large enough group of followers, you can maybe just let it grow organically, because every time that you post, hopefully they'll be commenting and seeing it. The sort of amplification effect will hear it, will apply, and more people will see it, and they'll start to come on board and sort of want to follow. So with Boma, I mean, in the very, very early days, we definitely used paid ads to find accountants and bookkeepers, but we haven't done that for about 1.5 years now, because they grow organically at a rate that we're happy with. How to get more webinar registrations from a Facebook advert? I would say on this one, couple of things. Some of this is regarding the webinar, and some is regarding the Facebook. So with the webinar, make sure that you have a really strong title in terms of that will be relevant to the audience that you're trying to get. So that's number one. If it's intriguing and interesting, and you position it right, and you have a good sort of copy in terms of what they're going to learn and maybe an interesting guest like Phil, then that will definitely help. When it comes to the Facebook advert, again, make sure you're targeting the right people. Also make sure that you have a great image. So you don't have to just use the image. So when you put the link in to link from the Facebook advert to your webinar registration, they will often pull up the sort of the image from, and we're using Zoom, so it might pull up the image from Zoom, which isn't great. So you can actually have an image in there of your own. So you might come up with a really nice image which, you know, talks to what you're going to be sort of discussing in the webinar. Also have a strong call to action, and this goes for all of social media. Never assume that in your social post you've made it clear enough for the user to do something without having a call to action. So if you want them to click through and learn more, have learn more. If you want them to register for a webinar, have sign up or register for a webinar. Don't assume that they'll just intrinsically know what it is that you want them to do. And again, this could also be something like call or email me, especially important if you're wanting them to get in touch to discuss a service. How can Donald Trump be stopped from using Twitter? I really don't know. I don't think anyone knows the answer to that. And then look, the last two, I'm actually going to leave these to Phil because this really nicely links into the last couple of minutes of the webinar.
Okay, thanks, Charles. So I wanted to start with a question, Richard, which is this your perception of salespeople? So somebody who's pushy, arrogant, and perhaps only interested in winning the next sale. And part of the problem is that the reason we get this impression of salespeople is that it's down to the way that quite often that sales teams are run. So they have badly designed commission plans, and they have hire and fire cultures that just incentivize this type of aggressive style. And for me, sadly, it really taints the whole profession. And yes, I've actually seen this happen in some really well-known technology companies selling into the accounting space. And it's a shame because the net result is I know a lot of accountants who really just don't trust salespeople, which is really, really unfortunate. And so it's no surprise that for many accountants, the word selling actually has a bad image. But for most of you, you're running your own business. So you are the ones who can determine how sales or business development or client attraction, whatever you want to call it, is handled. So let's try and reframe your thinking a little with a quote from a sales trainer, an American guy, have to be American, with the name of Zig Ziglar. And he suggests stop selling and start helping. And this for me is really the very first sales lesson. So if people feel that they're being sold to, then they won't buy. If, on the other hand, they feel that you're helping them either by adding value or solving a problem that they have, then provided they perceive that the value of what you're offering is greater than the price you're going to charge them, then they'll buy from you. Now, I know many accountants who don't like to sell, others who don't think that they should sell, and yet I've never met an accountant who doesn't want to help their clients. So let's have a think about what clients want. And the interesting thing is, I would actually get you to think about the difference between what clients want and what they need. Now, for me, wants are known requirements or desires, whereas needs are solutions to problems, but the prospects, your clients, may or may not be aware of these underlying problems. Now, I'll almost guarantee that most of the discussions that you have with potential clients will focus on their individual shopping list of wants. So typically you're talking to a potential client and they're talking to you because they know they need help with their bookkeeping, their VAT returns, their annual accounts, and their tax returns. But they may actually need other things to help them with the way they run their business. It's just that they don't realize it yet. So remember, there are things that your clients know that they know. They know their products, they know their customers, or at least I hope they do. There are also things that they know that they don't know. So they don't know how to keep accurate books, or how to produce a VAT return, or do a self-assessment tax return. But there's an even greater number of things that they don't know that they don't know. So perhaps they don't know that by restructuring their debt, they could increase profits and improve the cash flow. Perhaps they don't know that by preparing a high-level overview business plan, they could actually draw up a list of specific actions they could undertake, and as a result add £50,000 of profit by the end of the year. Or perhaps they don't know that starting to think about maximising the value of their business now, rather than waiting until just before they retire in 5 years' time, they might be able to sell for 3 times the value. So it's really, really important that we uncover the client's needs just as much as their wants. Now, the second thing to think about is why clients buy anything. And there are 3 things potentially that would come into this. So they'll buy for a variety of reasons. Maybe they don't understand how to do their accounts. Maybe they're scared of the dreaded brown envelope from HMRC. Maybe they know they have a legal obligation for record keeping, but it's actually much broader than that. And we can break the reasons for buying anything into 3 distinct things, or 3 freedoms as we refer to them. So firstly, there's time freedom. So in our case, a client may be using our services because they recognize that by not having to keep their own books, it will save them 3 hours a week. But what can they do with this extra 3 hours a week? Maybe they can use it to talk to more customers, or maybe they can improve their internal operations, or maybe they can use it just to spend more time with friends and family. And how valuable is that to them? Secondly, there's financial freedom. So perhaps they realize that by working with you, they can find ways of being more profitable, or of earning more, or of increasing the size of their pension pot, or generating more cash for additional investment in their business. And then thirdly, there's mind freedom. So perhaps by working with you, they can sleep better at night because you can help them be more profitable, or you can help them pay less tax, or you can help them source additional funding for their expansion plans. So when we're talking to clients and prospects, it's really important to remember that your value is not providing bookkeeping services of sorting out tax returns or producing monthly management reports. So in other words, the value is not what you do, it's why you do it. So your value is helping your clients solve those problems that they may or may not know that they have. And the services you provide, whilst they're absolutely critical, they're almost incidental. The value that these services deliver is actually the extent to which you help your clients achieve time freedom, financial freedom, and mind freedom. So what this means is that when we're talking to potential clients, we need to do it in a logical and structured way that helps us uncover all of those unknown needs as well as the wants. And that means that when we're talking to clients, we need to be asking lots of questions. So on the next slide, we talk about ask, don't tell. Now, some of you have heard a longer version of this story, but it's a really good one to talk about. So when I set up my business, I visited a whole number of accountants. And the majority of them sat me down in their office and they talked to me about the range of high quality professional services they provided and explained their fee structure. There was no attempt whatsoever to uncover my wants and, more importantly, my needs. And in most cases, they'd even assumed what my wants and needs were from the start. So in my book, that's just a sales pitch, and it's a really poor one as well. So rather than just telling prospects what we do and how good we are, what we need to focus on is asking questions. So questions about their personal and business goals, questions about which of the 3 freedoms the prospect would like to achieve, or questions about how it's going to feel when they achieve them. So put yourself in the shoes of a potential client. They can choose accountant A, who has all the required professional qualifications, years of experience, and who delivers a really quick and high quality service. Or they can choose you, who offers exactly the same, but also helps them understand how they can spend more time with their family, or how they can increase their pension contributions, or how you can help them finally make a decision about whether to buy or rent that new factory unit they've been stressing about for the last 6 months. I know which one I'd choose, and I'd probably be prepared to pay a higher fee too. So let's take a look at the skills we need in asking the right questions. So we need to develop a series of questions that we can ask prospects that will help us understand not just what they want, but also what they need. And we can think of these as 3 distinct types. The first of those is what I call situational questions. And these focus on what's happening in the business and in the client's life right now. So you can ask things like, what are your plans for the business for the next 2 or 3 years? Or how happy are you with your profits or your cash flow? How much time do you spend looking for improvements? Or how comfortable are you with your work-lifestyle balance? And what that will start to uncover are areas where perhaps the client or the prospect is not so happy. So then you can start to ask what we call pain questions. And these focus on things that may not be going well right now. So we can ask things like, how supportive of the business is your partner? Or are you sure you have enough cash to pay your tax or the salary bills? And what ways would you like to improve your business? Or perhaps, are you getting enough holiday or time off? And then thirdly, we then consider what the implications of these issues might be. So what will happen if you don't address these problems? And this is how we can then define the needs that the client has to add to their existing shopping list of wants. And then, of course, we can identify ways in which we can help the prospect address these pain points through delivering the services that we offer. So remember, the value of what you're offering is not what you do, it's why you're doing it. Now, we could spend far more time working through techniques we can use to uncover these needs and explain our value. But clearly we're a bit time pressed right now. So if you are interested in talking further about this, I'm running a half-day workshop at the end of the month that does exactly this in more detail. But before we close, I did want to address one final and crucial question that I've received from lots of accountants over the last couple of months. And it's all around the rights or wrongs of how we should be working with our clients during the coronavirus pandemic. And that's the question of, should I be charging my clients now? My answer to that is a categoric yes. Now, first and foremost, you should respect and recognize the value that you provide. You're running a business just as much as your clients, and you should be rewarded for the years of training and experience that you've invested in to be able to deliver high quality professional advice. And secondly, of course, in order to recover, the economy needs the cash to keep flowing. If you're being paid for your services, you can pay your staff and your suppliers, who in turn can pay their mortgages and buy their weekly shopping, perhaps even from another of your clients. So keeping the money going will help us through this recovery phase. Now, of course, I absolutely get that it's human nature for us to want to help our clients, and especially those that are in a really distressed state. And of course, there's nothing to stop you from offering discounts to clients who are in real trouble. Or maybe you can agree things like deferred payment plans to help with cash flow. And there might even be a small number of clients who you really do want to offer free support to. But please, please be careful that you don't fall into the trap of giving away the crown jewels away for free to everyone. If you start doing lots of work for free now, not only will you be losing money, but you're also setting a precedent for every time in the future when a client is facing a bit of a tough time. So we started off with that opening thought of, stop selling and start helping. So let me leave you with a parting thought, which is people don't like to be sold, but they love to buy. So hopefully I've given you some ideas on how to stop selling and start helping, but most importantly, how to help your clients to buy from you. So thank you all very much for attending today. I really appreciate you giving up your time. For those of you who'd like to look at these and other skills and techniques in more detail, don't forget there's a half-day workshop that I'm running on the 24th of June. There are still some early bird tickets still available if you're quick. My contact details are on the final slide, so head over to my website or send an email. I don't bite, and I absolutely promise I won't be a pushy salesman. Thanks, Charles.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Phil. Yeah, as I said, I think it's just really interesting to, I suppose, connect the dots between, on the one side, sort of the marketing, how you attract people to your firm, and then, once they're there, how you actually turn that engagement, that sort of relationship that you've built up into a sale. So really interesting to hear some of the techniques that you're offering. So again, as Phil said, thank you so much for your time. I know how valuable it is. I wish you all the best, and we'll see you on the next one of these.